it does. All right. Let's read a book. I'm going to open 2 books actually. 7:44. Against the bell. I'm going to open 2 books. Ẹkáàbọ, don't worry, we'll come to that later. Let's get into what we want to discuss today. Okay. And I think we're going to stay on this thing for a bit because I think it's a topic that requires that we are educated on it so that we don't get carried away by all this, bombastic ranging of certain things that happen in history that you're wondering where the person get it from, and they tell you that there's a book that said it. I'm not going to mention the video that's prompting what I'm about to do right now, but a number of people have been sending me that link. I know the person in question. People have said to me, I don't like to talk, it's not necessary because a good person, but you can be honestly wrong, So the conversation, what I'm about to do right now, is actually to respond to what the person said without having to play what the person said, because I don't want it to look like an attack. But it's important that we do this so that we don't get carried away with nice sounding things that are not true. So let's begin with this. Somebody claimed, please, again, this is not an attack, just that a lot of people say, people from different parts of the world literally sent me that video, and I've seen the video before. I just thought the premise was wrong, and this is how an argument works. If your premise is wrong and your evidence is wrong, you will have no argument. There's no basis for your argument. It doesn't really matter what you say, you will be wrong. The premise is wrong, the evidence is wrong, your assertions, no matter how good you sound, your assertions will be wrong, and your conclusions will definitely be wrong. So somebody said that Oduduwa, was Abraham, and that they had read a book where Oduduwa is said to be Lamurudu, and that Lamurudu was Nimrod, and that was the oral tradition of Yoruba people. So use that as the basis for whatever he said. Now, different people have sent me these things. Some of them I haven't spoken a bit. They're like, you got to, is this true? Like, it's very fascinating. I know some of these things sound nice. It's not true. But and the best thing to do is look at the source. So let's start with the book that was published in 1921. The book is called The History of the Yoruba People by Samuel Johnson. Now, what the person said, again, I like to repeat myself, and this is intentional. Somebody said, why are you always trying to apologize? It's not an apology. It is that there are certain things that are going to hear. One that be but let's say it's a So here's the book by Samuel Johnson. Again, the book was written in the 1890s, but it was published in 1921. It says here, the origin of the Yoruba nation is involved in obscurity. Like the early history of most nations, in the commonly received accounts are for the most part purely legendary. The people being unlettered and the language unwritten, all that is known is from traditions carefully handed down. Remember what you say, no? Carefully handed down. The national historians are certain families retained by the king at Oyo. In fact, let's not start here. Let's start with the statement that the person made. He says, let me read for the person to so mark pada saying na ko we ma dunia. Also wípé in the name Lamurudu or Namurudu, we can easily recognize a dialectic modification of the name Nimrod. Who this Nimrod was, whether Nimrod's surname the Strong, the son of Ashul, or Nimrod the mighty hunter of the Bible, or whether both descriptions belong to one and the same person, we cannot tell. But this extract not only confirms the tradition of their origin, but also casts a side light on the legend. So the person read this paragraph. In the name Lamurudu, we can easily recognize a dialectic modification of the name Nimrod. Therefore, he's Nimrod. That's what the person did. We're going to go back a bit. You know why? Because if you want to really study, you don't pick things out. You study what is before that stuff and what's after it, so you understand the context. Where did he get that idea from? Was it from Yoruba people? Now, remember what we read earlier, where the man writing said that the people being unlettered and language unwritten, all that is known is from traditions carefully handed down. Did they hand down that tradition? That's a question that must be asked before we go to town with Lamurudu. I went to primary school and secondary school in Nigeria, and we were taught that Lamurudu was the father of Oduduwa. How many of us were taught that thing in school? If you were, just say yes in the comment section. If you went, it's fine, say no. Anybody has ever heard the word or the name Lamurudu? Whoever heard it? You heard it before. Lamurudu. Okay. So here's the question. That name and the story behind that name, is it indigenous? Did the Yoruba people have that in their history? Is it their tradition, or is it imported, or was it imported? Let's read the book. There's so much confusion. There's no confusion. Let's stay with me. Stay with me. It says here, the Yorubas are said to have sprung from Lamurudu, one of the kings of Mecca. Dun, dun, dun. Yabo, please stop. I'm not answering any question. Listen to what we're doing. The Yorubas are said to have sprung from Lamurudu, one of the kings of Mecca, whose offspring were Oduduwa, the ancestor of the Yorubas, the kings of Gogobiri and of the Kukawa, two tribes in the Hausa country. It is worthy of remark that these two nations, notwithstanding the lapse of time since their separation, and in spite of the distance from each other of their respective localities, still have the same distinctive tribal marks on their faces. And Yoruba travelers are free amongst them and vice versa, each recognizing each other as of one blood. At what period of time Lamurudu reigned is unknown, but from the accounts given of the revolution among his descendants and their dispersion, it appears to have been a considerable time after Mahomet. We give the accounts as they are related. The crown prince Oduduwa relapsed into idolatry during his father's reign, and as he was possessed of great influence, he drew many after him. His purpose was to transform the state religion into paganism, and hence he converted the great mosque of the city into an idol temple, and this Asara, his priest, who was himself an image maker, studied with idols. Then he went on to talk about an Asara, a Brahma, who was brought up a Mohammedan, and so on and so forth. Then he says, the Yorubas are certainly not of the Arabian family and could not have come from Mecca. That is to say, the Mecca universally known in history. And no such accounts as the above are to be found in the records of Arabian writers of any kings of Mecca. An event of such importance could hardly have passed unnoticed by historians. But then, it may be taken for granted that all such accounts and traditions have in them some basis in actual facts, nor is the subject under review. I'm going somewhere. Nor is the subject under review exempted from the general rule, and this will become apparent on a closer study of the accounts. That the Yorubas came originally from the east, there cannot be the slightest doubt. There are many, not even slight, plenty doubts. But let's just read it in the right. That the Yorubas came originally from the east, there cannot be the slightest doubt, as their habits, manners, and customs and so on all go to prove. With them, the east is Mecca, and Mecca is the east. Having strong affinities with the east, and Mecca in the east looming so largely in their imagination, everything that comes from the east with them comes from Mecca, and hence it is natural to represent themselves as having hailed originally from that city. So we're from Mecca, Abi? Not so fast. The only written record we have on this subject is that of Sultan Bello of Sokoto, the founder of that city, the most learned, if not the most powerful of the Fulani sovereigns that ever bore rule in the Sudan. Stop. In the Sudan again, Sudan, not Sudan country, in the Sudan. black land of black people, in the black area. This fantastic story was written by the man called Sultan Bello of Sokoto. The only written record. Oh dear. Mambo. The only written record we have, the only written record we have on this subject is that of the Sultan Bello of Sokoto, the founder of that city, the most learned, if not the most powerful of the Fulani sovereigns that ever bore rule in the Sudan. Now listen, Captain Clapperton, in his book Travels and Discoveries in Northern and Central Africa, 1822 to 1824, made the acquaintance of this monarch. From a large geographical and historical work by him, Captain Clapperton made a copious extract from which the following is taken. Before I tell you what it was taken from the extract, let me explain. Sultan of Sokoto, Sultan Bello, that's Amadu Bello's great-grandfather. He was a Fulani man. He could write. He wrote a story. And in that story, he mentions Lamurudu, another thing we're going to read just about now. He mentioned different things about Yoruba people and where he thought we came from. That's what he wrote. So you begin to see something here. The man is talking about traditions to start with. He's talking about Odudua and talking about Yoruba people. What if I told you that not once did Samuel Johnson go to Ife to collect data about the history of Ife that he wanted to write? Why? Because his goal was really to write about Oyo. He was an Oyo man, by the way. Samuel Johnson, don't get carried away by the name. He was a Yoruba man. He had been born in Sierra Leone by free slaves, and then he grew up, took on the name Samuel Johnson, but he's a Yoruba man, right? He was an Oyo man as well. So, to be honest, his book is actually good. Once you can get past the origins of Yoruba people, that thing he wrote is not it. The first, me personally, I break the book into three. The first part talks about different things about Yoruba people, language, counting, all kinds of things, culture, customs. Then there's the origin bit, and there's the Oyo bit, and the contemporary history of his time. The first part is good. No, 4 parts rather. First part is the customs. Second part is the origin. Third part is history of Oyo, and the fourth part is contemporary events of his time. The first is good. The third is good. The fourth is good. The second is off. And that second is a major problem in our scholarship of Yoruba history. And the funny thing is that people don't even tell you that he, by the way, he was gracious enough to mention where this thing is coming from. People will jump as though they travel to Ife and on the microphone sound 11. Egbenusi Mike. Look about to do at Lamurudu. It didn't happen. Egbenusi Mike in fair one Daruko Lamurudu. It's a foreign idea. Let's read a bit more. The only written record we have on this subject is that of the Sultan Bello of Sokoto, the founder of that city, the most learned, if not the most powerful of the Fulani sovereigns that ever bore rulings in the Sudan. Again, I've mentioned what Sudan means. Captain Clapperton then traveled across northern and central Africa between 1822 and 1824. And what did Captain Clapperton did? He got hold of the book by Sultan Bello. And when he was writing his own book, Travels and Discoveries in Northern and Central Africa, he quoted a lot of stuff from Sultan Bello, which Samuel Johnson read. How do I know? You talk on here. He said, the only written record is from Sultan Bello of Sokoto. Captain Clapperton, Travels and Discoveries in Northern and Central Africa, 1822 to 1824, made the acquaintance of this monarch of Bello. From a large geographical and historical work by him, by Bello, Captain Clapperton made a copious extract from the book that Bello wrote, from which the following is taken. Quote, Yaba, or Yoruba, is an extensive province containing rivers, forests, sands, and mountains. Has also a great many wonderful and extraordinary things. In it, the talking green bird called Babaga parrot is found. And of course, it's talking about what he found in Yoruba land. That's observation. They see the trees, the mountains, the rivers, birds, all of those things. By the side of this province, there's an anchorage or harbor for the ships of the Christians, who used to go there and purchase slaves. These slaves were exported from our country and sold to the people of Yoruba, who resold them to the Christians. In other words, sometimes you have Hausa slaves brought down from the north, bought by Yoruba people, and then sold to the Portuguese. The inhabitants of this province, Yoruba, Y-A-R-B-A, it is supposed, listen to this please. Who is writing here? Sultan Bello. He's quoting Sultan Bello essentially. By the way, he's even in quotes, so it's not even essentially, he's literally quoting him. The inhabitants of this province, Yoruba, it is supposed originated from the remnant of the children of Canaan, who were of the tribe of Nimrod. The cause of their establishment in West Africa was, as it is stated, in consequence of their being driven by Yaruba, son of Catan, out of Arabia to the western coast between Egypt and Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia. From that spot, they advanced into the interior of Africa till they reached Yoruba, that's Yoruba land, where they fixed their residence. On their way, they left in every place they stopped at a tribe of their own people. Thus, it is supposed that all the tribes of Sudan, again, not the country, everyone, all the tribes of the Sudan who inhabit the mountains are originated from them, as also are the inhabitants of Yaori. Upon the whole, the people of Yoruba are nearly of the same description as those of Nufe or Nupe. That's what Sultan Bello wrote. Now let me read what Samuel Johnson is going to say here. In the name Lamurudu or Namurudu, we can easily recognize a dialectic modification of the name Nimrod. Who this Nimrod was, whether Nimrod surnamed the Strong, the son of Asol. One second. I'm going to read something from the Bible. The big one. In the name Lamurudu or Namurudu, we can easily recognize a dialectic modification of the name Nimrod. Who this Nimrod was, whether Nimrod surnamed the Strong, the son of Asol, or Nimrod the mighty hunter of the Bible, or whether both descriptions belong to one and the same person, we cannot tell. Thank you. But this extract, Ojumio, Kila and Kabai. Cause the time. I'm on another page. Oh well. But this extract not only confirms the tradition of their origin, but also casts a side light on the legend. Arabia is probably the Mecca of our tradition. It is known that the descendants of Nimrod, Phoenicians, were led in war to Arabia, that they settled there, and from thence they were driven by a religious persecution from Yoruba, their first permanent settlement in Africa. Yoruba is the same as the Hausa term Yoruba or Yoruba. I'll say this. By the way, if you read a bit down, you see where he was referring to Egypt and stuff. They were subjects of Egyptian conqueror Nimrod and so on and so forth. Here's the point. When the person quoted that portion, it made it seem as though it's Yoruba tradition. But in reality, it's something we essentially took on after we had heard it said about us, especially those who were educated or were exposed. But there's something else he mentioned. He mentioned that Oduduwa was Abraham, and that Lamurudu is the connection, because Lamurudu will be Nimrod. Now, as a young person, I spent some time in Sunday school, and I grew up to teach the Bible as well. So let's go to the Bible. If you're not a Christian here, don't worry. We're reading it to understand people's premises. People's premise. Genesis chapter 10, I believe. Let's start from chapter 9. Then we're going to take it to chapter 10. Now the sons of Noah went out of the ark. I'll take it again. Genesis 9 verse 18. Now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Those names are important. This is the biblical stance of how the earth got repopulated after the Great Flood. Interestingly, the story of the Great Flood is found in diverse cultures across the world, including Yoruba people. Right? If you also had a story of a great flood, a great deluge, so it's common to many groups across the world, right? Anyway, so it says here, excuse me, please. Don't worry, I think time to meet too. So it says, now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. We'll now jump to chapter 10. There's a reason I'm reading that one. You will understand very soon. Now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And sons were born to them after the flood. Then it goes on to mention the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai. By the way, biblical scholarship, Europe will be sons of Japheth. Tubal, Javan, Madai, all of them, Gomer, sons of Japheth. The sons of Ham were Cush. He has 4 children: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Cush is Ethiopia. Mizraim is Egypt. Put is Libya. And then Canaan, making 4. I'm going somewhere. The sons of Cush were Seba, and so on and so forth. Then it says here, in fact, let me read it very well. The sons of Cush were Seba, Avila, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka. And the sons of Rama were Sheba and Dedan. Cush begot Nimrod. Who begot Nimrod? From what we just said right now, we're using the person says Ozdua is Abraham. That's their premise. Ozdua is Abraham. So we're going to use the document they gave us to understand it. This person is stopping me in the comment section. Please just take a break. So from here it says Ham had 4 children: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. And Cush gave birth to Nimrod. Cush is from Ham. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? Someone says mute. Can you hear me? Okay. I don't know why the person wrote mute. Okay, thank you. Then it says, Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. So when Samuel Johnson was mentioning whether it was the hunter in his book, when I say let me read this so that you know that book pointed us to this. So let me read again. It says here, who this Nimrod was, whether Nimrod surnamed the strong, the son of Asuil, or Nimrod the mighty hunter of the Bible, or whether both descriptions belong to one and the same person, we cannot tell. So he's saying mighty hunter. That's the mighty hunter. He says Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. Biblical scholars will tell you, that Babel will be Baghdad, Babylon. That will be in the Iraq area. We're not doing Bible scholarship today. We're just going somewhere. Stay with me, please. So our Moti Cush be. Cush gave birth to Nimrod. Nimrod's kingdom began in Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land, they went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Kala, and so on and so forth. Mizraim, that's Egypt, gave birth to his own children. Canaan gave birth to his own children. Canaan gave birth to his own children. I'm going somewhere now. Verse 21. And children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder. The sons of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, Hul. I'll explain everything where they read. We're going somewhere. The sons of Aram were Uz, Hul, Githa, and Mash. Arphaxad begot Salah, and so on and so forth. To cut the long story short, let's jump a bit. My explanation will continue, I promise. If you go to chapter 11, verse 10 says, this is the genealogy of Shem, the same Shem we just read about. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years, and so on and so forth. Arphaxad begot Salah, Salah begot Eber. Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg. After he begot Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and begot sons and daughters. Then Peleg lived, and Serug, and so on and so forth. After all this Turinchi, Nahor lived 29 years and begot Terah. And after he begot Terah, Nahor lived 109 years and gave birth to sons and daughters. Then Terah gave birth to Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Let me now stop here. I know that was a long read. I'm going to explain. Let's assume for a second that Lamurdu was real. Let's assume Lamurdu was real. Please, if you're on TikTok, you have to power tab. This is showing activity. Don't worry, I'm about to explain everything we're done the read now, so it will make sense. Let's assume Lamurdu was real. Whose son would he be? Or whose son was he? And his father will be whose son of the three sons of Noah? I'll explain. Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Nimrod's father was Cush. Who was Cush's father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth? Anybody remembers after all this Turinchita in Kalataro? Cush will be the son of Ham. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You are with me. So if Nimrod were to be a Yoruba man that became our ancestor, let's assume for a second, although it's not, but let's say he was. He would be the descendant of Cush, who was the son of Ham. Thank you very much. Now, was Abraham a descendant of Ham? I'm sure you must have heard this phrase before. Anti-Semite. They are Semitic people. That thing is actually from the word Shem, the son of Noah. When you hear they are Semitic, anti-Semite, they use a lot in the US. Anti-Semite. If you speak against Jews, anti-Semite. The word Shem, Semite is from Shem, who was the son of Noah. So Noah had Shem, Ham, Japheth. If Nimrod was Yoruba man, whether he was Yoruba man or not, he was the son of Cush, who was the son of Ham. Abraham was the son of Terah, who was a descendant of Eber, who was a descendant of Shem. How on earth would Abraham, who was a descendant of Shem, be Odudua, who is supposedly a descendant of Ham? How can they be the same person? The answer is they cannot. So even when you use the argument, because people send me messages, is Odudua really Abraham? We saw it somewhere. Even if you use the person's text, it is still wrong. Odudua cannot be Abraham, because at best they will be cousins. Because again, Noah had three sons. A broad Bible word, whatever, map. What's the best way to say how the word was filled is that Shem fathered folks in, like the Jews, the Arabs. Shem fathered them. Japheth fathered Europeans, and Ham fathered Africans. Why? Because of course the four names: Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. They were blacks, essentially. If we are going by the Nimrod or Lamurudu explanation, we will still be descendants of Cush, who himself was the son of Ham, the son of Noah. Abraham is a descendant of Eber, which is why they called him Hebrew. Talk for another day. Eber was a descendant of Shem. How on earth is the descendant of Cush the same person as the descendant of? They will be at best cousins, because Abraham was the descendant of one brother. Oja will be the descendant of another brother. So that will be Ham and Shem. No, they can be. Uncle cannot be nephew. So they will be cousins. All of that to say this. Number one, Yoruba are not from Lamurudu. In fact, let me not even tell you. Let me read it from a book. I'm going to go to one of the books I mentioned earlier, A History of the Yoruba People by Stephen Banji Akintoye. Then I'll tie everything together. I know some things sound very nice. Oh, we are connected to the Jews. If you go back in time, Nimrod, it's not true. I don't want to say not lie, but not lie. By the way, you don't need that connection. I don't know why people need that thing so badly. Like, it's a product of inferiority complex, to be honest, especially when it's not based on truth. Mombo. I'm going to read from, this is actually a fantastic portion of this book by Professor Stephen Banji Akintoye. Now, where did we get all this idea of Lamurudu from? In Yoruba scholarship, is from Samuel Johnson. Yes, Johnson had gotten it from Clapperton, who had gotten it from Sultan Bello. By the way, if you've ever been to UI, University of Ibadan, that building, that hostel, don't put in Sultan Bello, was named for this Sultan Bello, the great-grandfather or great-grandfather of Ahmadu Bello, the Sadano of Sokoto. He's the one who came up with this fantastic idea. He didn't even ask us. He just sat down where he was and was like, these people must be the people that had left this place at this point, and wrote the story. 1822, Clapperton happened on that book. He visited Sokoto. Maybe one day we can even discuss that book. Excuse me. He visited Sokoto, and in writing about North and Central Africa, he decided to quote, as a true scholar, to quote the materials that he had. And the only written document about the origin of Yoruba people was the one written by the Sultan. So he wrote it in his book. Samuel Johnson gets the book and copies it or references it in his own book, and he mentions it, by the way. So I'm not just saying he did it. He said, he told us how he got it. Now, how on earth are you going to use what Sultan Bello wrote as my own tradition? That's his opinion at best. If you want to know where people are from, you ask the people. This man was going to write about Udua. He didn't even visit Ife to ask about Udua, or to ask about how the earth was formed, or how Yoruba people came to be. He just wrote something. To be honest, I'll tell you something interesting. There's something you notice in Genesis if you study that portion. If you read Genesis chapter 1 to chapter 11, there's something you notice with the writer of the book, Moses. Moses was in a hurry to get to Abraham. He was trying to say everything he needed to say. Here, there, here, little here, little there, little here, little there. His focus was Abraham, for good reason, because that's their ancestor. He was trying to get to, by chapter 12, all the history of about 2,000 years was done. He had finished everything from the creation of the earth, in fact, not even 2,000 years, of millions of years, from the creation of the earth to the Tower of Babel. Everything was done in 11 chapters. Chapter 12, Abraham. It's the same thing. It's the same thing Samuel Johnson did. His goal was to get to your history. Everything else was just, let's just talk about how it came to be, and we can just arrive in Oyo. Now, you have to calm down and not just assume that what is said about Lamurudu is our history. It is not our history. Lamurudu does not even surface in Yoruba history. Kosi. We may not have written things down, but we have oral tradition. And in our oral tradition, Lamurudu was present. And he is not present. And oral tradition is also documentation. It may not be written, but it's documentation. And that's important. And you can't use a foreigner's thoughts of a person's history as the history of that person. Makes no sense. Let's read A History of the Yoruba People by Stephen Banja Akintoye. I'll go back just a bit. A son of Yoruba immigrants, liberated slaves returning home from Sierra Leone in the 19th century, Samuel Johnson was educated for the service of the church. After elementary education in the Church Missionary Society, CMS Mission School in Ibadan, he was sent for secondary education to the CMS Training Institution in Abeokuta, where he studied from the age of 16 until he graduated at 20 in 1866. He then returned to teach in Ibadan until 1882, after which he repeatedly featured in the peacemaking missions. I'll take that slowly. He then returned to teach in Ibadan until 1882, after which he repeatedly featured in the peacemaking missions seeking to end the wars among Yoruba states in the last 2 decades of the 19th century. That's Kirijo War. The book, The History of the Yorubas, which he started to write in these years, was completed in 1897. That's the one we just read. At the training institution in Abeokuta, he had schooled under a German teacher named Chief Buehler, who, while training his students as church workers, gave them a very solid grounding in ancient history, the history of Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and Rome. From such beginnings, Johnson developed a strong interest in the history and mythology of the Middle East. Moreover, Johnson's Yoruba land of the late 19th century was increasingly affected by the growth of Islam and Christianity, 2 world-shaping products of the Middle East. In particular, with Islam came the knowledge of Western Sudanese myth. Again, in case you were not here when I said earlier, Sudanese or Sudan doesn't refer to the country we now call Sudan. Everybody was Sudan. West, East, into Genoa. Official delineation, right? So it says here, in particular with Islam came the knowledge of Western Sudanese myth and legends through the writings of Muslims of the Western Sudan, including Hausa land, especially some of the writings of Sultan Bello of Sokoto, which contain some Sudanese myth about Yoruba origins. Above all, the 19th century was in Europe the golden age of the study of the history and civilization of ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptian writings had just been deciphered, and the expanding knowledge of the wonders of ancient Egypt was creating great excitement in the world of scholarship. Why is this important? If you decide to read that book, you will see the part where it was also connecting us with Egypt. Let me quickly say something. Late 19th century, early 20th century, everybody wanted to be from Egypt. And that's why you still see it in Black America today. Egypt is the place where everybody is from, because we was kings and queens. We was all kings and queens. Everybody was, because that was the buzzing thing at the time. For the first time, people were, in the West at least, people were confronted with the fact that Egypt was a developed civilization, and that it was a great place. So everybody wanted to connect themselves. They were black, you were black. Maybe they became white later, but they were originally black. Somehow we're also from Egypt. We're also connected with everybody wanted to be from Egypt. Egyptology was the rave at the time. So even Samuel Johnson connected us to Egypt. I read that part just a little bit earlier. So he said the ancient Egyptian writings had just been deciphered, and the expanding knowledge of the wonders of ancient Egypt was creating great excitement in the world of scholarship. The writings of the emerging class of literate Yorubas were commonly laced with Egyptian and Middle Eastern references, analogies, and mythology, a practice apparently regarded then as a mark of erudition. In other words, once you begin to say, oh, Kinikon Egypt, Kinikon, you'll be seen as educated. Forget whether there is fact or not. Just connect us with Egypt. We was kings and queens. So he says here, the writings of the emerging class of literate Yorubas were commonly laced with Egyptian and Middle Eastern references, analogies, and mythology, a practice apparently regarded then as a mark of erudition. as a reading of Lagos newspapers of the time will abundantly show, all these influences combined to shape much of Johnson's. The history of the Yorubas, and to account for his linking of all important details of early beginnings of Yoruba history to the Middle East. Thus, Oduduwa became a personage from the Middle East, and Oromion's migration northwards to the Niger I'll take that again. Thus, Oduduwa became a personage from the Middle East, and Oromion's migration northwards to the Niger country became a journey with the Middle East as its intended destination. Indeed, the influence of Middle Eastern mythology pervades most of Johnson's early history chapters, all the way from his preface, which is absolutely true. In contrast, his accounts of the history of the Oyo Empire were assembled from oral evidence he collected in places like Oyo and Ibadan, where memories of the disintegration of that empire were still quite fresh, while his accounts of late 19th century Yoruba history were products of his own eyewitness observations of many of the events. I said earlier that when you read that book, The History of the Yoruba by Samuel Johnson, in your mind, for sanity's sake, you have to divide it into 4. The first part, that has to do with Yoruba customs and naming and things like that. Perfect. The second part about Yoruba origins, imperfect. The third part about Oyo history is very good. The fourth part about his own experiences in terms of his contemporary, what happened in his own day, fantastic. But that part about origin is messed up, which is messing up a lot of us as has to do with our culture, because the first written history book for Yoruba people, so we took it as gospel. It's a good book. 3/4 is not bad, right? If you score 3/4, that's still not bad. So he wrote about Oyo, he wrote about what was happening around when he was growing up, and he wrote about Yoruba customs. But that origin bit is where the issue is. And I'm not just the one saying it. Now you're hearing Professor Banji Akintoye say it as well. And you don't have to just hear me say it. Read the book, you understand all these things. So he says here that everything he was writing, especially from his preface, you will see Middle Eastern mythology. But when he wanted to write about Oyo Empire, he collected oral evidence from Oyo and Ibadan. When he wanted to write about what happened in the 19th century, he wrote of his own eyewitness accounts. Right? Fortunately, while much effort was being expended in following Johnson's ideas about the beginnings of Yoruba history, there existed all around us in Ife and other parts of Yoruba land an enormous wealth of traditions as well as evidence in the Yoruba political system and surviving practices and rituals about Oduduwa and his era. Ultimately, a different direction in the study of Yoruba history developed as part of a more scientific study of African history in general, which focused on the indigenous evidence as well as other source material for the reconstruction of early Yoruba history. In other words, what he's saying basically is that over time, we came to now say, if you're going to talk about Yoruba history, we would need indigenous sources, not fantastic ideas from Mecca, Eastern Region, and Sultan Bello. We go to the people who told the story, and the owners of the story will tell us their story. Consequent upon these efforts, listen to this, please pay attention. Consequent upon these efforts, we now stand able to lay aside with respect the Johnsonian hypothesis about the origins of Oduduwa and of the Yoruba. All who study the history of Ife and of the Yoruba people are now generally agreed that the great political changes which began in Ife in about the 10th century were indigenous in their origin, in their unfolding, and in their dramatis personae. It is on the soil of Yoruba land that Oduduwa was born and raised. It is only in that soil that his roots can be found. It is on the soil of Yoruba land that Oduduwa was born and raised, and it is only in that soil that his roots can be found. There is no Lamurudu in Yoruba history. We already know where it came from. If you want to ask Yoruba, you ask the people, they will tell you the history, and Lamurudu doesn't exist. I know that I was taught that thing in school. Shout out to my Yoruba teachers, they thought it was nonsense, but they didn't know better, so it's not their fault. Now wait till they teach us, but they were wrong. So history doesn't have Lamurudu. That's one. Number two, even if it were to have Lamurudu still cannot be Odudua based on Genesis chapter 9 to chapter 11, where the three sons of Noah are stated and their own descendants as well: Shem, Ham, Japheth. Descendants of Shem, one of them happens to be Abraham, which is why you call those people Semitic people today, Semites. The folks from Ham, he had 4 sons: Cush, Ethiopia, again not the country Ethiopia was larger than that; Mizraim, which is Egypt; Put, which is Libya; and Canaan. And one of Canaan's son, also one of Cush's sons was Nimrod. So even if you say that is Lamurudu, okay, let's agree, even though you are wrong, but just take it out. You now go to the family tree. Abraham does not exist on the family tree of Ham. He is in Shem. Therefore, he cannot be Odudua. Lastly, we won't spend too much time on it today. Maybe we'll have another session to discuss it. If you take our time to read about 2 things, one is called British Israelism or Anglo-Israelism. Meant almost like a cult, where people believed that as Anglo, and it was British Israelism, then it became Anglo in the sense that it spread beyond the Isles of the United Kingdom, right, the British Isles, so that folks in Australia, in Canada, in America, in New Zealand also believed in that concept of British or Anglo-Israelism, where they believed that they were the lost 10 tribes of Israel. 10 lost tribes of Israel. And they had texts for days to prove it. But Jews. It's called, I think the year was 2000 and must have been 2003. Was it 3 or 4? Thereabout, when I first read of British Israelism. That's why when I started hearing Yoruba and Israel, I was put off. Everything they are saying, maybe they don't even know. It's a repeat of what those guys. To not make matters interesting, there's another group, there's another movement. You know what? Let's read some things about these 2 guys. No, Israel is real. Israel is real. No, it's actually real. It's real. But it is not. I'm not from there. The whole premise of British Israelism is the idea that after the dispersion, when you had Israel was a nation of 12 tribes, right, from Reuben to Ephraim and Manasseh, and there was the first king was Saul, and then there was David, and there was Solomon, and there was Rehoboam. With Rehoboam, the country broke in 2. You had the north, the south. The north had 10 tribes, the south had 2 tribes. And then you had, the different capitals, Jerusalem, Samaria. And then over time, wars and wars. By the way, the idea of the Jewish idea was not a thing until the breakup of Israel into 2. There were no Jews. The concept of Jews came after. The folks in the south were the Jews, not the ones in the north. Someone says, is Israel not Jacob? Israel is Jacob. No, but I'm talking about Israel as a nation right now. Jacob already passed on while they were in Egypt. We're using Bible history. All right, so Israel is Jacob, or was Jacob, but we're talking about Israel as a nation right now. So what you see here is that the Jewish identity was not the same. It's not the same thing as the Israeli identity or Israelite identity. If you notice, you hear Israelite, then suddenly you start hearing the word Jew. Let me tell you something. There's an evolution in the identity of folks in that region. The original identity in the beginning, before they went to Egypt, was Hebrew. It was not a nation, it was an ethnic identity. And the first person to be called that was Abraham. Hebrew. Abraham the Hebrew. You can call Hebrew. So they were Hebrew. They didn't have a nation, but they were developing their own ethnic identity. Then it became Israel. Then when Israel broke in two, you had Jews and Israel. If you read the book of Isaiah, Jews and Israel actually fought, even though they were all Israel. It's like saying, and it's not that difficult, it's like saying that, no, I don't want to use Yoruba people as an example, but you get the point. Like during Kiriji, Yoruba people were in two different things, fighting each other. It happened in Israel too. It happened in Greece, by the way. All these things, that's why people insult us and say, Yoruba people used to fight amongst themselves. They don't understand. If you go to Greece, they fought for decades. They fought for 16 years. They were there for decades. One time to be Greek and Sparta. To be Athens and Sparta. Then you see Philip of Macedon trying to take over everywhere. So it's human. It happened everywhere. People who have not fought that kind of wars, they are not cultured people. I'll tell you something. I'm saying again, any group who didn't fight those kind of wars amongst themselves, they are not cultured. They did not evolve. They are primitive. They are where we were thousands of years ago. That's how history is. And this is a general thing. It's a general rule of thumb. Whether you go to the British Isles, what happened between the Germanic tribes, the Jutes, the Danes, then later on the Angles and Saxons, the Britons, the Celts, what it happened. Any ancient king, they will have that story, right? That's why people insult you with those things and say, you guys were fighting for 16 years. Your people will not be feeling, why were we fighting? You were fighting because you were evolving. Some say Angles. Yeah, the Angles. So the point I'm trying to make is everybody goes through that phase. So Israel also went through that phase where you now had a division between the north and the south. So the south, right, essentially had Jerusalem as the capital. Then the north, they were changing capitals all over the place, starting from Jeroboam and so on and so forth. Anyway, at a particular point in their history, the north was attacked and it was conquered. They were conquered everywhere. 10 tribes. That's where you get the concept of the lost tribes of Israel from. The 10 tribes were conquered. What's conquering Yoruba? Dispersion, right? When that happened, years later, some Anglo-Saxons then said they were the lost tribes of Israel. And they had a whole text on these things that I happen to have read almost 25 years ago. And seeing that thing now happen again now makes me feel like some of them already got out of that thing in the 19th and 20th century. Why would you be entering into that gutter in the 21st century to your long? Because of waiting. You want to be lost tribe. Why would you want to be lost when you're already found? You see one very funny. I saw something very funny. Mumbo. So the core tenet of British Israelism or Anglo-Israelism is that the British are the lineal descendants of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And as such, they hold a special divine favor before God. After all, the Israelites were the chosen of God, so they are specially chosen. Okay? They are also connected to they also believe that the British royal family are descendants of King David, which is quite interesting. It's quite interesting. How could they be the descendant of King David if King David's kingdom had gone to the south? So the perpetuation, as it were, of David's dynasty was in the south, not in the north, because Jerusalem was the seat of power, right? The north was just getting all kinds of people. So you had, after Jeroboam, different people were just reigning. That was where you also had Ahab, and so on and so forth. So if you're looking for the seat of David, you'll be looking southwards. You'll be looking at the descendant of Solomon and Rehoboam and so on and so forth. You'll not be looking northward. So you are from the 10 tribes of Israel, but your kings are descendants of David. Never mind that the king, the monarch of England, are from Germany, but somehow they are from David. History doesn't, pseudo history doesn't care about real history. Okay, we're going to switch the light source in a bit, but if you want to, agenda doesn't care about real history. Just they make them up. Just oh, that was smooth. Was it? We're good. Okay. So, like you, if you study the Anglo-Saxons, right, and how they got into England, you know that, historically, the British monarchy is from a Germanic group, not necessarily from Germany, from a Germanic group, right? So the Angles, the Saxons, they were Germanic tribes. So naturally, even the name was Germanic, Saxicoburg or something like that, before they changed to Windsor recently, less than 200 years ago. So the point I'm trying to make is that they don't care about that. They just say that their kingo or their monarcho is connected to King David. They also believe that what made it very, very... Some say the son of Solomon through Queen was the first ruler. It cannot be the first ruler of Ethiopia now. How can it be the first ruler of Ethiopia? It was when Queen Sheba herself, Queen of Sheba, was already a queen. It can't be the first ruler. But I get your point. You are right. And his lineage... Sorry, I'm jumping out again because of the lady in the comment section. His lineage is where you now get Haile Selassie, according to some sources. So the son of Solomon you're mentioning would be the ancestor of Haile Selassie. I'm sure we all know that one. Haile Selassie, the power of the Trinity. All right. Where was I? Yes. What made British Israelism very, very popular in the 19th and 20th century? Hell, Jesus is Lord. Mumbo, let me drink water, I beg. Yes, some people claim that. But it is neither here nor there. It's Bilisu Shungbo. That's what you're talking about. Bilisu Shungbo. If you want to know, excuse me, I won't tell you whether she's the one or she's not the one. If you want to know whether she's the one, ask those people for timelines. Timeline. What do I mean? At what point was that area inhabited? At what point did Bilikisu live in that place? At what point? What period? Right? Look at the period. When did Solomon live? The truth of the matter is that by the time you are done, you'll see a gap of centuries. So you'll be wondering if the person lived like Methuselah to be able to come and die in Ijebu. But it is where? Where was I? Historical context. The idea of Anglo-Israelism or British Israelism became very huge between the 18th and the 19th centuries, and it happened primarily because of British imperialism. They looked at what the British did. The British conquered about a third of the world. Some will say a second. Jesus is Lord. The British, they were everywhere. It was the empire where the sun never sets. They were all over the world. These guys believed that the reason the British had that kind of power was because they were descendants of Israel. And they were specially gifted to rule the world. Again, you can study these things. You can find articles online. It's just that you have to be careful because some of them are also... But we'll talk about it, go deeper later. I'll ask you a question later, Wes. Let me just finish this thing. So, what you see is atamo. There is no definitive... Atamo. This must be this because this was this. It must have been this so that it should be this. There's nothing like this is what it is. There's no clear claim to anything. It's just if it's like this and you really add it to this, it might become like this. If you make it like this, it will become like this. Then it is this. That's not how you are right. That's not history. The influence has waned, but they were big. British Israelism. And it made sense for them to think that they were very powerful because, of course, think about it. You had India, you had lots of places in Africa, you have just about even America was under Britain. You had all these places. Surely, you must be the blessed and chosen of God. Even if nobody you didn't write that Bible too, but I mean, feel among. Here's the crazy part. Today, the concept of British Israelism is seen as anti-Semitic by Jews because for them, you are taking their identity. Yeah, you can discuss Ashkenazi and Sephardic later, but the point is that they see it as anti-Semitism. It's not as big as it was, maybe because the empire fell, like all empires do, but that's just like a broad explanation of what British Israelism is. Now let's go to the other guys. So British Israelism or Anglo-Israelism is essentially white. Britain, United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Well, let's look at those who look like you. These ones are black. Their own movement is called Black Hebrew Israelites. Black Hebrew Israelites. This one, their own basis of being Israel is the fact that everything they read in Deuteronomy 28 is real to them, based on, say, slavery. They are blacks, they are Americans. And Americans often, perhaps due to American exceptionalism, they often see the world through their own prism. Especially, just about all of them. So in the case of the Black Hebrew Israelites, or Black Hebrews as they call themselves, they believe they are the children, they are the lost tribes of Israel because the curses in Deuteronomy 28 are evident or were evident in their lives. I don't want to read those things because the curses are heavy. But let me read just one verse of it. If you're a Christian, just read your Bible and pray every day. All this I am from Magog and Gog. The Bible itself is big enough to study without having, and be Yoruba proudly. You know what it means to be Yoruba? It's a flex, eternal flex. Why on earth would I want to jettison that because I want to be Israel so bad? Cool, makes sense now. Let me come to you from you had Gog and Magog. You climbed Gog and Magog hill in Jos. How now? Did you? In fact, this thing is long. But I've been in their meetings, by the way. Ah, I've been to places. I've been in their meetings, and I just wonder how on earth. Please listen to me. Deuteronomy 28 from verse 1 to verse 14 is about blessings. From verse 15 to verse 68, it's mostly curses. In fact, it's all curses. Now, when I've been in their meetings a number of times, and I'll be like, how can you leave out verse 1 to 15 that talks about blessings, and you now assume or embrace the curses of verse 15 to 68? Why not the blessings? Let me read the curses that makes them feel that they are the ones that the Bible was talking about. Because when they are in Israel, let me read to you. Verse 64. Then the Lord will scatter you among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other, and there you shall serve other gods, which neither you nor your fathers have known, wood and stone. And among those nations you shall find no rest, nor shall the sole of your foot have a resting place. But there the Lord will give you a trembling heart, failing eyes, and anguish of soul. Your life shall hang in doubt before you, and you shall fear day and night, and you have no assurance of life. In the morning you shall say, oh, that it were evening, and at evening you shall say, oh, that it were morning, because of the fear which terrifies your heart, and because of the sight which your eyes see. And the Lord will take you back to Egypt in ships. This is the only blessing that those people hold on to. Listen, and Egypt must be there, by the way. We already talked about how Egypt is very, very important in the historiography of Black Americans. No shades, by the way. This is just what it says. And the Lord will take you back to Egypt in ships, by the way of which I said to you, you shall never see it again, and there you shall be offered for sale to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you. There are many curses in this thing, but those final, like 64 to 68, is like the basis of their belief. They are the ones. And why did God do this to them? Because he said in verse 15, he says, but it shall come to pass, if you do not obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully his commandment and his statutes, which I command you today, and all these curses will come upon you and overtake you. Cursed shall you be in the city. Let me go back to the blessing. It shall come to pass now. It shall come to pass, if you diligently obey the voice of the Lord. Let me bless you before we go. I beg. It shall come to pass, if you diligently obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe carefully all his commandments, which I command you today, that the Lord your God will set you high above all nations of the earth. Amen. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, because you obey the voice of the Lord your God. Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the country. Amen. Blessed shall be the fruit of your body, and the produce of your ground, and the increase of your herds. This is the thing to say amen to. But no, Black Hebrews will leave verse 1 to verse 14 and be romancing verse 15 to 68. Why? Because they were dispersed abroad. It says here that they were slaves. Come on, Bibi, tell me, Raya Joe, Oma Rojo Buruko, Oma Comanche, Oma Dori Bible Codon, Emma Wow, Tebayo and me, Emma Azokio. Only the Lord will take you back to Egypt in ships, by the way of which I said to you, you shall never see it again, and there you shall be offered for sale. So when they think about the fact that they were sold, that they had experienced that horror of slavery in the Americas, especially in the United States, they say to themselves that scripture is talking about themselves. So think about it. British Israelism is about exceptionalism. It's about the blessing. They are first about the curse before they now say, oh, we are the original one, just that we messed up. That's why we got so. So they primarily believe that, number one, they are dispersed lost tribes of Israel, and they were sold into slavery because of Deuteronomy 28 verse 68. And it happened because they messed up and they did something against God. And you can say it is true because they were literally sold in America. they have Ayo Deji, are you here? Ayo Deji, are you here? I don't know if you were there. Was Ayo there? When some people are calling themselves Joshua Kiniko, they'll be looking for thick Hebrew names. Show me Ogbatomawa story platform here. Be 2021. They look for thick Hebrew names. So for instance, instead of Jesus, okay, let me give you a name. Let's say instead of Joshua, it will be Yehoshua. It will be something God, it will be something deep. It will be something Hebrew. Like they and by the way, the whole thing for them started in the 19th, 20th century. Around the time when British Israelism was waning, the Black Hebrew movement was rising. And all of them were also talking about being special. The maddest, craziest part of it is that, not craziest part to be honest, because there are many crazy parts. They think that the white people are Edomites, which is quite interesting because it makes no sense. Bible scholarship says that Europeans are descendants of Japheth. Edom, biblically speaking, were descendants of Shem. Why? Because Edom was another word for Esau, the brother of Israel, Jacob. So how will Israel be from Shem and his twin brother will be from Japheth? You see how Oduduwa, Lamrudu, and Oduduwa, Abraham, Ben on it, you know, she match. But people believe it. I'm like, Edom, the father of the Edomites, is Esau. Esau was a twin brother of Jacob. Both of them were the sons of Isaac, son of Abraham, of Terah, and so on and so forth, to Shem. Europeans are from Javan and Tubal and all of those things, all the way to Japheth. How on earth are you going to call them Edom when Edom is literally your brother, if you are Hebrew? So they used to say that they are the Kiniko and the white people are Edomites. And they also do not like Judaism. They make it very clear that they are not Judays. They are not Judays. They are a special breed called by God, and so on and so forth. This is like an overview of these two groups. A few years ago, some of the black Hebrews who were Nigerians who had gone to the UK or no, US, not UK, US specifically, maybe to study or they grew up in the US or whatever. Some of them have gotten disillusioned with Christianity and found their way into Black Hebrew movement or Black Hebrew Israelites. And in my experience, they're the ones who have been pushing, maybe not all, but in my experience, they're the ones who have been pushing this idea that Yoruba people, Igbo people, all of us, I've seen the one in Benin Republic. You see documents like this, and like, how did they? You know the time you take to conjure pseudo history. You might as well just use it for something better. But they tried. What try? One shot jump and created something. I'm saying all of this to say that what they were pushing, or what they've been pushing for a bit. By the way, there are some things, some people that will tell you that there's government involvement in some of these things in the US, but that's neither here nor there. If you're a Yoruba person, I beg you in the name of God and all that is good, don't look outside for your history. It's dangerous. Don't. The first thing that it shows is that either your ancestors were too dumb to document their own history, or that you are too inferior to accept what your history is. Our ancestors are not dumb, and I believe you are not inferior. There's no reason for you to want to attach yourself to Israel. It's unnecessary. And if you're a Christian, there's literally, I'm going to look for a scripture for you. But it's in Galatians. By the way, to be very clear, I'm a Gentile. Based on, if we're going to use biblical terms, I'll be a Gentile, and that's beautiful. Like, I have no problems with it. I want to show you something, Genesis, dear Lord. In Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Thessalonians, Timothy, Titus. Who did that thing when you were in Sunday school? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts of Apostles, Romans, Corinth, Galatians. Anyway, let me read to you Galatians 3. It says here, for you are all sons of God through faith. That's verse 26. For you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female. For you are all one in Christ Jesus. And if you are Christ's, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. In other words, the connection you need to Abraham, according to Galatians 3, is Christ. It's not Israel. And please, I know they will still say it to me. If they say it to me, I might come back and speak on it. I received on this I don't want to talk on, and I've also tried to make sure that I'm not mentioning any group. It's not about the person. It's about, we're going to be doing Yoruba history along. I think we'll be having it. Because when you study your own history sincerely, you'll be challenged, and then you discover that to bring yourself down, where you become a copy of another, it's beneath your dignity. It's beneath my dignity. It's infradig. When you now say, oh, I want to be like Kinekon, is the connection as a Christian. By the way, I'm a Christian, proudly so. The connection that I have with Abraham, according to Galatians 3, is Christ. And I can be a Gentile, I don't mind. I don't have to, I'm good. But I'm Yoruba. And being Yoruba is so powerful. It's so wonderful. The scientific bit of our history is mind-blowing. And we should be exploring that so that we can do more, do better, based on what we see. We talk about history because we want to challenge ourselves to do better, not because we want to say, oh, see what we did back in the day. We'll see what we did back in the day, but we'll challenge ourselves. If they could do this, then we can do something now. Whether it's in science or in technology or in metallurgy or in material science or in archaeology or in arts or even in religion or in politics, in statecraft. The kind of things our fathers did in medicine, in pharmacy. You can't read those things and want to not be Yoruba. So, going forward from time to time, we'll be having sessions after the news to discuss Yoruba, which is what we're discussing, the evolution of Christianity in Yoruba land. It also makes sense, right? It's important. I've talked about, the bead road. China had Silk Road. We had bead road in the 9th century, and then it became really, really huge by the 11th century. Bead Road. The same way China had Silk Road, we had Bead Road. We'll be talking more about it. Hopefully, with that knowledge, we'll not be carried away by, different ideas that come from different places. But with all due respect to everybody, but please, I beg. Oluwatosin. The Jesus that I know is enough. Is enough. I don't mean that we know everything. No. I'm saying that what we are is enough. And I hope that helps somebody. Okay. So, in conclusion, Abraham is not Dudua. Number one, And I'm not even gone to the, if you notice, I didn't even talk about the dates. But let's talk about the dates. What time is it? Wow. Let's see if I can do this in a few minutes. Let's go and do it in a few minutes. Oluwatosin. Oluwatosin. I think I should even read something to you from a good source. The Jesus that I know is enough for me. Ayodeji, why are you like this? Koda now. Koda. It is well with you. I see what you are doing, but I'm going to act like I didn't see it. All right, let's get into this very quickly. So, number one, based on biblical scholarship, we know that John and Abraham are not related at all. And even if we go by the Lamrudu thing, which is not real, they will be at best cousins. That's one. Number two, we want to talk about their context. Odudua was born in Okeora. Meanwhile, let me say this with all sense of humility. There's something that I've noticed when people talk about ancient personages. We talk about them like they are just ideas, not persons. We talk about them like they belong in history, not knowing that they still have descendants who are still alive today. And so we use things, just say things that like whatever we like, we just say like, it was there, it could have been something. It's like someone coming to your household and telling you about your grandfather, that your grandfather is Igbo, or your grandfather is, let's say you are Yoruba, say he's Igbo, they say he's from Chad. You know, it's like when you talk about the president, Tinubu, for some reason, we don't remember that he has children. Well, not we. Some people don't remember. They just say things. And it's easier for ancient people. They're just somewhere in the distant past, so you can't really feel them. Why am I saying that? When you rewrite ancient people's history, you are also rewriting the history of their children, of their descendants. And it's something that people have to be very, very careful about. The first time I spoke on this thing, and I'm trying not to go in that direction, was when people were talking on Benin history. If you are from the royal family or from any of the royal families in Ife, the royal family of Benin, the royal family in Oyo, you are descendants of Odudua. So the concept of Odudua is not abstract. It's a living, active idea, person, not just one person that can just write this and say is the same thing as somebody. And I say that to say that this thing, people should understand the fact that he has children. We are all his children, by the way. All Yoruba people are his children. Right? All of us Yoruba people, we are his children. But you know, it's like talking about Olowo. All of us are Olowo's children. But not all of us have his surname. Right? There are certain people who have his surname, who bear his name as children, biological children. That's the word. We are all ideological children of Awolowo, but he also has biological children. The same way, all of us Yoruba people, we talk about him being our, what's that word? Progenitor. And that's true. He's our father because of the fact that he was larger than life. He was great, and you know, through him, many kingdoms and peoples, you know, emerged. However, some people are his biological descendants, and it's stupid to keep saying this nonsense about rewriting his history and just making things up. It makes you think as though some of us don't mean anything. We matter. Let me use Black Lives Matter. We also matter our history matters. Stop writing nonsense. That's one. Number two, the dates. The physical person known as Oduduwa lived in the 11th century AD. That's in the 1000s. We're in the 2000s. This is 21st century. He lived about 1,000 years ago. The physical being lived about 1,000 years ago. Abraham, the one in the Bible, he lived 2166 BC. 2166 years before Christ was when he lived. There is no way on earth that the person who lived, and this thing you can check, he lived 2166 years before Christ. There is no way on earth that that person is the same person as the one who lived 900 years after, 900 years in the years of 900 AD. Oh boy, I'm trying to change that Latin to in the year of our Lord. You get the point. 900 in the year of our Lord. This is 2025 in the year of our Lord. The person who lived 2166 BC cannot be the same person as the one who lived 900 AD. Could work. And then the other thing, which I will be the last thing, is that the Yoruba identity, the Proto-Yoruboid identity, predates the creation of Israel as the nation. And I think I should read something from a book. I'm going to read from Akinwumi Ogundiran's book. 1 second. 2166 BC. This is 2025 AD. That's about more than 4,000 years. And that's why when you do, if you read Matthew chapter 1, you see that the breakdown that between from Adam to, excuse me, they will say something like from Adam, so I think it's to David, it's 2,000 years from David to Jesus, 2,000 years from Jesus to us. You always see that kind of thing. Beautiful. Please listen and be blessed. Moses is 1526. Some people would say 1600. Some even take it to 1650, but you can say between 1526 and 1650 thereabout. But we can say 1526. You can fact check these things, by the way. Let's read this. But please, you have to add BC to these things, because 1526 could be like the days of Martin Luther, if it's AD. But this is before Christ. Okay. This is. I want to try not to say anything too much after this. What I'm about to read right now is actually. The book is called The Yoruba, A New History by Akinwumi Ogundiran. By the way, he's a professor of history and archaeology. Fantastic teacher. Sat under him a number of times. Fantastic guy. Okay. The various language and cultural forms that are distinctive of the present day and ancestral Yoruba originated from a common ancestral language and epistemological. By the way, his book is very academic, but we'll get there. It says, after all, the various language and cultural forms that are distinctive of the present day and ancestral Yoruba originated from it. I'm rushing. The various language and cultural forms that are distinctive of the present day and ancestral Yoruba originated from a common ancestral language and epistemological community that scholars have labeled Proto-Yoruboid, one of several linguistically distinct societies who lived around the Niger-Benue confluence in present-day Nigeria between 2500 and 300 BC. Some members of that ancestral community began to radiate from the confluence between 300 BC and 300 AD. By 800 AD, some of the descendants had split into several dialects of the Yoruba language and had become the largest integrated cultural group in West Africa south of the Niger River in terms of population size and territorial spread. Despite their internal differences, however, the members of the Yoruba-speaking community became increasingly interdependent by the 12th century, subscribing to the same epistemic institutions, regimes of value, and aspirational principles. Hi. This thing is actually very exciting, so I'm trying to find a way not to go deep. There's another thing he said. One more. I'm going to explain it very well. Oh boy. So here's the point. Around 2500 BC, the group that will become Yoruba, the identity was already formed. Around 2500 BC. Now, Abraham, or something like that. Abraham, I said it was 2166. So here's the point. The identity of those that will become Yoruba was formed not in Baghdad, which is that Mesopotamian area where Abraham comes from or came from. Abraham did not come from Africa. He came from that side. And there's no reason for all this. We are all Africa. Now, where did he come from that? At the time he came a couple of centuries after the Proto-Yoruboid speakers were already forming their society. And of course, they evolved, right? And so it's important to say that, I'm trying not to explain too much. It's important to say that, by the way, proto means like prototype, model, right? So the first iteration, the first set. Those who gave us our identity were existing, at least in a particular form, not the way we are right now. That's why it's called proto. In a form before Abraham was born. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. If you read this one, it's saying 2500 BC, 300 BC. Around that time, when they were forming Yoruba, or the Yoruba identity, on TB, Father Abraham has many sons. We are children of Abraham, but that it's not right to now say that, it's the same people. If they had not given birth to Abraham at the time, or let's say Abraham was around that time, and by the way, there was no nation of Israel at the time Abraham was born. There was no nation of Israel at the time Isaac was born. There was no nation of Israel when Jacob was born. There was no nation of Israel when he gave birth to all his children. There was no nation of Israel when they all went to Egypt and stayed there for 430 years. There was no nation of Israel when they left Egypt. They had to travel under 40 years. So add it to Israel, that's 470. Put all of that together and remove it from when Moses was born. Then you now see how it's not possible to say that, we are Israel. Your identity was already something at the time Israel was being formed. I think we did a very crude calculation the other day. And the better one would be if we all agree, that, again, I'm not making this up, you can fact check, you can Google right now. Moses was born in 1526. At the time Moses had his encounter at the burning bush. He was 80 years old. Right? And that was when he began to lead Israel. And that was around the time that they had been there for 30 years. Then he spent 40 years leading them. That's 120. And the nation was still not formed at the time of his death. If you take 120 from 1,526, you have 1,406. And even at that time, Israel was not formed because it was Joshua who eventually actually established Israel, not Moses. But at this particular period, this was BC, by the way, Yoruba tin identity tiwon nile Yoruba. We don't need to take on another person's identity. You are good. I'd like to stop here. It's been a long explanation, but I hope you got something out of it. And if you want to be Christian, be Christian. If you want to be Muslim, be Muslim. If you want to do Elesi Abalaye, it's your right. But at least not all this history man Jamara want to create something else. It's people have done it before. Anglo-Israelism, Black Hebrews. Unnecessary. It's unnecessary. Thank you very much for listening. May God bless you. May God bless Yoruba land. May God bless Nigeria. It's 9:20 p.m. I'm hungry. I want to fly. So I was going to stay a few more minutes because we had issues earlier. But I saw some questions in the comment section. Let's try and answer a couple before I go. Oh dear. Oh boy. Eshe math tuition. Someone says, can you tell us the history of Oromila? Yes, I can. Are you going to do it today? No, sir. But if you want to, let me say it this way. We're going to do it. But when we do it, everybody should just remember we're discussing history, not myth. As long as we understand that Konisija, the history, Oromila was a human being. Okay? Was a human being, was married, he had wives, he had children. I have to switch this audio source before it goes off. 1 second, please. You will not fight me now. As I'm saying, it's going to be history. So, and I want to recommend some books if you're interested. The first one this is actually a fantastic book on that subject. Oromila and Socrates, two philosophers of the classical age. It's written by Professor Sophie Oluwole. It's a fantastic book. When the time comes, we'll read it. Oromila and Socrates, these two philosophers of classical age. There's the only Mumbo. I want to make. In fact, if you look for what I just said right now, you find it. Socrates and Oromila, two patron saints of classical philosophy. Socrates and Oromila, two patron saints of classical philosophy. It's a fantastic book. Then you also want to read Odunfa by Abosede Emmanuel. And I think Baba Wande Abimbola mentioned Oromila in the beginning of his àwọn ojú odù mẹ́rìndínlógún. I'm a Christian, no. Okay, but let me even because of what you said. The truth of the matter is this: you reduce Oromila if you see him only through the religious prism. If I mention Pythagoras right now, let's test ourselves. A few minutes. Pythagoras, what comes to your mind? I'll mention two names. Pythagoras, what comes to your mind? Math, geometry. Good. No, algebra is the man from Persia. Math. What if I told you that he had a religious order? Pythagoras. He had a religious order. Then he had a mathematical order. We'll have this session. Not today. We have this session. If I mention Socrates, that's how you should think when you hear Orunmila. Last God knows how long. You are now asking, does Yoruba even have any connection with Abraham? Of course we don't. I have a connection with Abraham because I'm a Christian. Galatians chapter 3. I'm a child of Abraham because I belong to Christ. And I love it. It's beautiful. Oh boy. What a monologue. When you come out, how about me switch? One second, please. All right. Thank you. Ilé ti tó máa lọ náà. Níta ṣe náà tó. Olúwa tó sìn. Níta ṣe náà tó. Àti wà bí ọjọ́ ti pẹ́ díẹ̀. The Jesus that I know is enough for me. So if you're a Christian, you are connected to Abraham, but not necessarily biologically. It's by faith through Christ. But Yoruba as a people, we are not connected to Abraham. Okay? What was the last thing? Orunmila, yes. We'll have a session on him, but again, conversations like that for me, maybe because of what how I learned these things, is from a philosophical standpoint, and it's we've got to be able to approach the study of Orunmila the same way we can approach the study of Aristotle. I studied Aristotle in school. Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, all those people, Greek philosophers. You can do whatever you want to do with their thoughts, but those thoughts, there's a spiritual angle to everything, yes, but the philosophical part of it should not be lost, because of mysticism. So we'll discuss it, but again from that perspective, so it makes it easier for all of us to learn. So we're learning as Yoruba people, not necessarily as religious. So yeah, those books are available. We'll talk about it when the time comes. And one more thing, and then we'll go. It's a very, very good question, but I couldn't stop. Have you ever opened a history book, sir? You are repeating propaganda. Okay, he's talking to somebody. Oh, okay. Ẹ má bínú, mo wá ó ní ìkọ̀kan téèyàn kan sọ lẹ́ẹ̀kan tó ń fẹ́ kó máa dáhùn sí. Ẹ wò, ó dà ń pé a máa sọ ọjọ́ mi ọjọ́ rẹ̀ ni o. Igbo's Ugbo. Ṣé àwọn kan tún sọ̀rọ̀ Igbo lẹ́ẹ̀kan ni? Ẹ wò, I can't find it anymore, but it's actually a very good question. I just couldn't stop at the time. But if you ask that question, don't worry. If you ask again, what question? I think you were the one that asked the question. Okay. I thought a large population of the English people are Anglo-Saxons. Oh, yes, you did. Yes. The word English itself is from Angles. Yeah, what were we talking about at the time? Yeah, so, oh boy. Now that I'm seeing the question, and I'm seeing how wide it is, But the summary of everything is, so the British Isles did not used to have the Angles and the Saxons. It had the Britons, it had the Celts, um, the Romans invaded at the time and took over the entire space and colonized the place for centuries. And named some of the places that we have in England today, including London and Manchester. Eventually pulled out. London used to be called Londonium. Eventually pulled out, and then the Germanic tribes, there was an incursion of Germanic tribes. First, of course, with Ragnar Lothbrok and his brother, the Vikings. They moved in. Then you had different Germanic tribes, the Danes, the Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons. And then they pushed Awanto and Bess. Most of them are the ones in Wales now. That they were pushed in. And the point I think you were trying to, Ragnar is Anglo. No, Ragnar is Viking. So think of it like Yoruba, Egba, Yewa, Ife, Oyo, Okun. The same way, Yoruba, German, Egba, Angles, Oyo, Saxons, Okun, Jutes, Ijebu, Danes, just like that. So the way you have Germanic tribes, you also have several Yoruba tribes. So different Germanic tribes moved into that place at different points in time. And then the Anglo-Saxons, they were more, they took over the place. I'm tired, but I hope you got the answer. Thank you very much. If you're not able to come up today, I apologize. Now, question with the answer plenty past time. But thank you very much for being part of today's session. Maybe we can take one or two people. There's one person, Totin Jula Tekon, so maybe I'm just going to take that person. Then we can go. Thank you very much for listening. I can't see the person anymore, so I don't know who the person is, but thank you. Thank you, West. We'll have the sessions on Yoruba history, Yoruba stuff. Maybe our news. We'll just time our news. Whatever we're doing, maybe 1.5 hours, then we'll concentrate on the stuff. I think it's important for us to study Yoruba history. Again, if you notice all the things that we say here, we try to read the sources and also mention the book so that you can also fact check. And please, let's just learn together, all right? We'll do well, and the Yoruba budget, Nigerian on the budget like along. Thank you very, very much. Okay, I can't say the person, so I might as well go. If you've liked, shared, typed, done anything, including the person saying, hi, baby, I don't know who your baby is, but everybody, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you for tapping, whether you're on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and right here on TikTok. Thank you very much for your support. And if you have also been giving, I saw some gifts earlier. I don't usually stop mid-speech to acknowledge, but every single gift is appreciated. I thank you very much, from the roses to the hearts, every single gift. Thank you very much for your generosity. And if you want to support what we're doing here, please, I would say reach out to me. But while the anthem is playing, because we usually listen to 2 anthems before we end the sessions, while the anthems are playing, I might as well just write it now. Excuse me. Okay, so you can support us using the bank details up on the screen. We have some things we're cooking, and we'll see how everything goes. And Caris Events, thank you very much for telling people about Radio Me Global. That's much appreciated. All right, let's have the anthems and then we'll call it a day. By the way, we have the sessions every weekday, Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. if you're at time West African time. So we'll be here tomorrow at 4 p.m. We're going to listen to a response to somebody who is trying to rewrite Nigerian history. We're going to have a Ṣé ń gbọ́ mi báyìí? TikTok ni o. You might be no. Sorry about that. It was the app, but we're good now. I hope you can hear me. So I was thanking everybody for your support, and I also said we're going to listen to the anthems. And I said tomorrow, 4 p.m. We have the sessions every weekday, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Tomorrow we're going to be listening to a response to somebody who was attempting to rewrite Nigerian history. So we have a response to that person. We'll listen tomorrow. Please come early. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Tuesdays and Thursdays we don't stay for too long, so please let's make it a date as early as possible. Thank you very much. God bless you. Before we go, we're going to listen to our anthems, the Nigerian anthem and the Yoruba anthem, and then I'll see you later. So here's the anthems. Please sing along if you know. If you don't, learn the lyrics. Thank you.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. In peace or battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hand unto our children a banner without name. O God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. Nigeria may be Iṣẹ́ wa fúnlẹ̀ wa, fún ilẹ̀ ìbí wa. Kàgbéga, kàgbéga, kàgbéga fáyé rí. Ìgbàgbọ́ wa ni pé bá ti bẹ̀rù làbọ̀ mọ́. Ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká ṣiṣẹ́, ká jọlá. Ìṣọ̀kan àtòmìnira ni ẹ jẹ́ ká máa lépa. Tẹ̀síwájú fọ̀pọ̀ ire àtòhun tó dára. Ọmọ òkàdìdé bọ́ sípò ẹ̀tọ́ rẹ̀. Ìwọ ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀.
Àwa ní ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀, ìmọ́lẹ̀ wọ̀ ní wọ́kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run. Ẹlẹ́yìnbó ní bàjẹ́, Nàìjíríà náà ní bàjẹ́. Nǹkan tó bá dáwọ́lé àmàyọrí sí rere ni o. Gbogbo nǹkan tó wà lọ́kàn wa fún ọdún 2025 tá à ti mú ṣẹ. The remaining 1 month will be a month of fulfillment, a month of recovery. This is the only month left in 2025, but I pray for you that it will be better than all the other months of 2025 put together. That God will open your eyes to opportunities and that you will do great things and achieve greatness. Same for Yoruba land. Oṣù kan tó kù yìí a máa fi rí ire nílẹ̀ Yorùbá. And Igbola burú sí ẹnìkankan wa o. Dáadáa la máa gbọ́ síra wa o. Thank you very much, and may God bless Nigeria, may God bless Yoruba land, and may God bless you and your family. See you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West Africa time. We're going to have a great time together tomorrow. Thank you very much. And if you were unable to speak today, tomorrow we'll bring people up. Please come early. Have a lovely evening. God bless you. Odaro. Odaro.